The camera fades in with black and white clips of Johnny Carson at his desk, the crowd roaring. On the surface, The Tonight Show starring. Johnny Carson looked polished, safe, even predictable. But sometimes the carefully scripted late-night machine spun completely out of control. From tears to chaos, from biting insults to backstage threats, these are the nights when Johnny Carson lost his grip. Moments so raw, so heated, and so unforgettable that they still echo decades later. Johnny ruled late night for 30 years, drawing more than 20 million viewers a night. But even the king of late night could not stop what was about to unfold. Stay with me as we count down 10 of the most heated, shocking, and legendary Tonight Show clashes of all time. Number 10. Jimmy Stewart's tearful poem.
The title of it is Bo. That's the name of the dog. He never came to me when I would call unless I had a tennis ball.
It was supposed to be a light-hearted segment. The great Jimmy Stewart, the Hollywood everyman, had come to promote a new book. Sitting across from Carson with his trademark slow drawl, Stewart said he had written a little poem. The audience leaned forward, expecting a witty story, perhaps a comical rhyme. But what came next was something no one was ready for. Stewart began reading Bo, a heartfelt ode to his golden retriever. At first, the poem seemed playful. Tales of mischief, socks stolen from drawers, and muddy paw prints across the floor. But slowly the mood shifted. His voice trembled as he spoke about the dog's loyalty, the empty space he left after passing away. The crowd grew silent. Carson, usually the master of composure, lowered his head, his eyes welling with tears. Ed McMahon, usually laughing in the corner, wiped his own eyes. By the final line, Stewart himself was choking back emotion. The Tonight Show, a stage built for laughs, had turned into a place of quiet mourning. It wasn't comedy, it wasn't entertainment. It was real, unguarded grief broadcast to millions. And for one of the only times in 3 decades, Johnny Carson himself cried on national television. Number 9. Robin Williams, Unleashed.
One of our more serious actors.
Yeah. Olivier, yo.
If Jimmy Stewart had brought tears, the very next guest would bring a storm. It was October 14th, 1981. A young, wild comedian walked onto Carson's stage. His name was Robin Williams. From the second he sat down, the energy shifted. Williams did not just sit for an interview, he exploded. He lunged at the microphone as if it were alive, barking like a dolphin and shouting, "Flipper!" He ran his hands through his hair, mimicking Shakespeare one second and an alien the next. He sprinted across the stage, leaping into characters faster than the audience could even process. Carson, normally calm and in control, leaned back, laughing helplessly. It was one of the rare times The Tonight Show's king simply surrendered. There was no way to rein him in. Robin Williams didn't just tell jokes. He attacked the stage like a hurricane, turning every chair, every prop, every silence into part of his act. The audience roared, gasped, clapped, and begged for more. By the end, Carson was nearly doubled over in laughter, shaking his head. He muttered, "Ladies and gentlemen, Robin Williams," as if even he could hardly believe what had just happened. That night, America witnessed something special. A young comic who could turn The Tonight Show upside down in a matter of minutes. And Carson, usually the conductor of chaos, was simply another passenger on the ride. Number 8. Bob Hope, Carson's least favorite guest. For decades, Bob Hope was NBC's untouchable star. He was America's comic institution, beloved, patriotic, and endlessly promoted by the network. But behind Johnny Carson's polite smile, there was frustration simmering. Whenever Hope walked onto the Tonight Show stage, it was always the same routine. The band played his signature theme. He delivered carefully scripted one-liners, never straying from his cue cards. Then came the film reel, clips from his next NBC special or movie, followed by more scripted banter. There was no spontaneity, no spark, no real conversation. Carson, who thrived on quick wit and improvisation, hated it. He wanted guests who could surprise him, who could dance in the unscripted moment. With Bob Hope, there was none of that. One of Carson's head writers later admitted, "There was nothing spontaneous about Hope. He had the same entrance, the same shtick, every single time." Worse, Carson couldn't even say no. NBC executives forced Hope onto the schedule, sometimes against Johnny's wishes. To the network, Bob Hope was too powerful, too valuable to ever decline. Carson went along, but behind closed doors he vented to his staff. After one particularly painful appearance, he reportedly snapped, "If I ever end up like that, guys, I want you to shoot me." On screen, the two men smiled, bantered, and delivered their lines. But in reality, Carson was trapped, hosting a guest he secretly considered his least favorite of all time. Number 7. Frank Sinatra and Don Rickles. The surprise roast.
Oh, I played Jerry Fail or some of those.
It was November 12th, 1976. A rare night. Frank Sinatra, one of the most elusive stars in Hollywood, had finally agreed to sit down with Johnny Carson. For Carson, this was television gold. Sinatra almost never did talk shows, and millions tuned in just to see what would happen. At first, the conversation flowed smoothly. Sinatra shared stories, cracked a few dry jokes, and the studio audience soaked up every second. But then, chaos walked in. Without warning, the studio doors swung open and in charged Don Rickles. The self-proclaimed merchant of venom ignored the cameras, plopped himself down next to Sinatra, and instantly hijacked the moment. He began firing insults like a machine gun, jokes about Sinatra's love life, jabs about Carson's hairline, digs at the entire stage. Carson leaned back in his chair, laughing but also clearly struggling to keep order. Sinatra, famous for being cool under pressure, smiled. But at one point he asked dryly, "Do you mind if I finish my story?" It was a rare crack in his polished image, and the audience roared at the tension. Rickles kept going, refusing to back down. For several minutes, The Tonight Show was no longer Carson's stage. It was Don Rickles' playground. In the end, Sinatra chuckled and Carson wrapped it with grace, but viewers knew they had just witnessed lightning on live television. The moment proved that even when Carson landed a guest as untouchable as Frank Sinatra, The Tonight Show could still spin into beautiful, unpredictable chaos. Number 6. Dolly Parton and Carson's year's pay. Comment.
Just knock on the door and say hi. Hear this voice coming from somewhere. I can't talk now.
It was February 17th, 1977, Dolly Parton's birthday. The rising country star walked onto Carson's stage in a sparkling gown, flashing her trademark smile. From the very beginning, Johnny teased her with that familiar grin. He had often joked about Dolly's figure, but this time he took it one step further. As the audience chuckled, Carson leaned in and asked if she had always been zaftig, a word that hinted at her curves. Dolly, never one to miss a beat, laughed and replied with southern charm, "Well, I've always been pretty well blessed." Then came the line that froze the room and made television history. Carson smirked and said, "I'd give about a year's pay to peek under there." The crowd erupted in laughter, whistles, and applause. Dolly laughed too, covering her face for a second, before recovering with a witty comeback. She reminded everyone that her figure was real, and that she was more than comfortable owning the joke. But beneath the laughter, the moment carried attention. Millions watching at home saw the line as playful at the time. Yet today it's remembered as one of Carson's most controversial quips. Dolly, to her credit, handled it with grace, humor, and charm. And the clip went down as one of the most talked about exchanges in Tonight Show history. A mix of comedy, flirtation, and uncomfortable honesty. Number 5. Chevy Chase vs. Siskel and Ebert, December 12th, 1986. The Tonight Show couch was crowded that night. Johnny Carson in the middle, with comedian Chevy Chase on one side and the nation's two most famous film critics, Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, on the other. At first, the conversation was lighthearted. Carson poked fun at the critics while Chase grinned, promoting his new comedy, Three Amigos. But then Johnny asked a dangerous question. So, what's the worst movie you've seen recently? The studio fell quiet for a moment. Ebert looked at Chase, hesitated, and then dropped the bomb. Well, I'd have to say, Three Amigos. The audience gasped, then erupted into boos. Chevy Chase blinked in disbelief, forcing a smile as the camera zoomed in on him. He tried to deflect with a joke. With your help. But the tension was unmistakable. Carson raised his eyebrows, loving the drama. Ebert, sticking to his guns, explained why he thought the film fell flat. Siskel backed him up. Chase tried to laugh it off, but behind the grin, you could see the irritation. This was no playful ribbing. This was a live, unfiltered review delivered straight to the star's face. In the days that followed, Ebert admitted he received piles of letters. Some scolded him for being rude to Chevy Chase. Others praised him for his honesty, saying it was refreshing to see critics hold their ground on national television. For Carson, it was the perfect Tonight Show moment, a mix of comedy, discomfort, and truth, all unfolding in real time. And for Chase, it was a reminder that the critics weren't afraid to play rough, even when the cameras were rolling. Das Trigger number 4, Wayne Newton confronts Carson, 1980s. By the early 1980s, Wayne Newton was one of Las Vegas's biggest stars. But to Johnny Carson, he was also an easy target. Night after night, Carson slipped jokes into his monologues, many suggesting Newton was soft, effeminate, or hiding something about his private life. At first, Newton laughed them off, but as the jokes piled up, the laughter stopped. Behind the scenes, Newton tried to get Carson to quit. He called the show. He asked mutual friends to intervene, but nothing changed. Finally, Newton decided he had enough. One afternoon, he marched straight into Carson's office without knocking. He looked Carson in the eye and said, "I don't know what friend of yours I've killed, but these jokes about me will stop now, or I will kick your ass." Carson, usually the master of timing and control, was stunned into silence. The man who could destroy anyone with a single punchline suddenly had no words. The joke stopped, and the story of that confrontation spread through Hollywood like wildfire. Years later, Newton would still call Carson mean-spirited. And while the cameras never caught this clash, it remains one of the most infamous Tonight Show legends. Proof that Carson's humor could cut so deep, it nearly started a fistfight. Number 3. Joan Rivers, From Protégé to Pariah, 1986. For more than a decade, Joan Rivers was Johnny Carson's chosen one. He had discovered her in the mid-1960s, given her a platform, and even made her the permanent guest host of The Tonight Show. Carson once told audiences, "Joan Rivers is going to be a big star." And he was right. By the mid-1980s, she was more than a rising comic. She was the first woman to ever sit in Johnny's chair night after night. But then came the moment that shattered it all. In 1986, the brand new Fox network offered Joan her own late-night talk show, a direct rival to Carson's empire. The contract was worth millions. It was the break of a lifetime. Joan accepted, but out of fear that NBC would block the deal, she didn't tell Carson until the news was already public. When she tried to call him, Carson allegedly hung up on her. Twice. Joan later recalled, "He slammed the phone down. He never spoke to me again." Carson felt betrayed. He had built her career, and in his eyes, she had repaid him with disloyalty. His reaction was swift and merciless. From that night forward, Joan Rivers was banned from The Tonight Show. For 26 years, she never appeared on the program she once helped carry. It wasn't until Jimmy Fallon took over in 2014 that Joan finally returned, walking onto the same stage where Carson had once made her a star and later turned her into a pariah. The feud remains one of television's coldest exiles, a painful reminder of how quickly Carson's favor could turn into a lifetime of silence. Number 2. Charles Grodin's antagonistic appearances. Most celebrities came on The Tonight Show, hoping to charm Johnny Carson, win over the audience, and promote their latest project. But Charles Grodin? He came to pick a fight. Across 36 appearances, Grodin carved out a unique role for himself. The guest who acted like he hated being there. From the second he sat down, the air changed. Instead of flattering Carson, Grodin leaned forward and demanded, "Are you interested in anything at all? Do you really care? What do you care about in life?" Carson, usually quick to cut down guests with a joke, simply smirked and shot back, "Yes, my health, and I've got this terrible pain right now." The audience roared, unsure if they were watching comedy or a genuine clash. In another appearance, Grodin took his script, lit it on fire, and accused Carson of not caring about his guests. The crowd gasped, and letters poured into NBC. Some viewers furious at Grodin's disrespect, others thrilled at the unpredictability. That was the brilliance of it. No one ever knew how real it was. Was Grodin truly insulting Johnny? Or was it just the driest, most committed bit in late-night history? Carson loved it. He signed Grodin to an exclusive deal to keep him from other talk shows, ensuring those heated exchanges belonged only to The Tonight Show. For the audience, Grodin's appearances blurred the line between reality and performance. And every time he sat in that chair, you could feel the tension. Was Johnny laughing along, or was he seconds away from kicking him off the stage? Number 1. Don Rickles and the Broken Cigarette Box, 1976. It began as a harmless prank. In December 1976, Don Rickles was guest hosting The Tonight Show while Johnny Carson was away. During the broadcast, Rickles leaned on Carson's desk, swung his arm, and accidentally smashed Johnny's prized cigarette box, a gift he kept by his side every night. Rickles laughed it off, tossed a joke at the audience, and moved on. But Johnny never forgot. The next evening, Carson returned to his set and found the box broken. When his staff told him who was responsible, Johnny made a split-second decision. With the cameras rolling, he grabbed a cameraman, stormed out of his own studio, and marched straight onto the set of CPO Sharky, the sitcom Rickles was filming next door. The audience at home had no idea what was happening. Suddenly, their TV screen showed Carson barging into another soundstage, interrupting the taping. He held up the broken box like evidence in a crime. "Did you break my cigarette box?" he demanded, glaring at Rickles in front of his cast and crew. Rickles froze, caught off guard. For once, the merchant of venom had no insult ready. He stammered, feigned innocence, and begged the crowd to believe him. The studio audience howled with laughter. The king of late night had stepped off his throne, invaded another show, and flipped the script on the man who made a career out of roasting others. The clip became one of Carson's most replayed highlights. Proof that even the master prankster Don Rickles could be caught and humbled. And for millions of viewers, it was the perfect Tonight Show moment. Unscripted, unpredictable, and unforgettable. From Jimmy Stewart's tears to Robin Williams' chaos. From Wayne Newton's fury to Joan Rivers' heartbreaking exile, and Don Rickles getting caught red-handed. These moments proved that even in the polished world of late-night television, real human drama could break through. Johnny Carson ruled late night for 3 decades, but the moments we remember most were the ones he couldn't control. The tears, the insults, the confrontations, the laughter so wild it rattled the walls. That is why Johnny remains a legend. Not just because he was funny, but because when the unexpected happened, he let it play out. He gave us television that felt alive. So here's the question for you. Which Tonight Show moment shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this trip back into late night history, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because there are plenty more stories where this came from. Until next time, remember, the best television is the one you cannot script.